Treaty of Versailles was signed in June 1919 and had many important points and terms. Today we're going to look at the 5 most important points. But first, what actually was the Treaty of Versailles? Well, in short, the Treaty of Versailles was the most significant treaty after World War I. It would decide the punishment for Germany and was written up by the Big Three at the time. Now, these Big Three were Llyod George, Clemenceau and Woodrow Wilson of UK, France, and the USA, and they had a very important job as the points they decided would essentially shape Germany's future through punishment. So, their first main point was war guilt. Now, this was under Article 231, and essentially, what it said was that Germany had to accept full blame for starting the First World War, and they had to take full responsibility for the damage and loss occurred in that war, which was not entirely their fault, and hence extremely unfair on the German people. The second main point were the reparations demanded in the Treaty of Versailles. Now, the term reparation defines the compensation demanded from a victorious nation on a defeated one, and is normally in the form of money and or goods. These were much higher than the Germans expected, as they assumed that US influence would help keep the cost down, as the USA didn't want them to pay too much. However, they asked for 132 billion gold marks, which was a lot of money back then in the German currency, and hence heavily damaged the German economy, and as they had to print more bills, inflation skyrocketed and their market crashed. In the near future, Germany would have to take US loans to help repay back this treaty. These loans were the Young and Dawes Plan. The third most important point was German land, German territory. Germany lost its own land to its neighboring states, which were France, Denmark, Poland, and Lithuania. The land was also taken to create new nation states, and on the picture you can tell how Germany looked after the Treaty of Versailles, losing much of its land. They also lost their overseas empires and hence their colonies, especially in Africa, as the US tried to stop imperialism. The loss of land meant that they lost resources, making it much harder to repay back the treaty. Our fourth point is the German armed forces. Their army was cut down to 100,000 men, which was much less than any other army of European power, and hence made them weak. They could not have any conscription, which was when they would force soldiers to work. All of them had to be volunteers, making it much harder to recruit. They also weren't allowed any aircraft, which was a growing tactic after the First World War. They weren't allowed any armored vehicles, which is your armored trucks and or tanks, and this again made them quite vulnerable to their opposition. Also, the Navy was only allowed 6 battleships and no submarines, and this was done to help Britain maintain their naval supremacy, as then Germany wouldn't be a contender. And the Rhineland was also demilitarized for French protection, as there was a land between Germany and France. This left Germany in a weak and vulnerable position, and severely hit their honor, as they loved their army. The fifth point was the League of Nations. Now, the League of Nations was an idea by Woodrow Wilson of America. It was one of his highlighted points in his 14 points. It was supposed to be an international police force and help prevent any future wars by keeping countries calm. It was also supposed to maintain world peace. Its aim was also to encourage demilitarization, hence reducing conflict between countries. They also initially kept Germany out of the League of Nations because of the First World War and this treaty. Well, that's all we have for today, so be sure to like the video, Comment down below what topics you want to see, and subscribe to see more.